Welcome back to more of the Fruit of Grisaia. In the last episode, found out that Yumiko now has a little brother, which is very interesting. But her mom has recovered and she's getting ready to leave the hospital. She was on her way to see her mom, and a reporter that had dropped the bomb that she had a little brother. And well, as you can see, we just have no words. What? When I turned back to face him, the man was wiping at his green-damped forehead with a knowing smirk on his face. He knew he got me. So that means the father's been sleeping around, you know, impregnating somebody else, and that's not good. You know, that just things are falling apart. It's not good. The reporter reached out and presented me with a magazine already open to a certain article. Practically grabbing it from his hands, I ran my eyes frantically across the page. And the moment I saw that headline, the blood in my veins seemed to freeze solid. East Beach Express President Sakaki Michiaki's illegitimate child? Question mark, exclamation point. Long-awaited son born to a mistress. Bold sans serif headlines emphasized by sharp decorative flourishes. Below the face of a man I hadn't seen in a while, lined up with the portrait of his unfamiliar partner. Paragraphs full of vicious words that I could barely stand to read. And at the very end, one sentence that plunged me below even despair. As I had doubted my ears in the hospital room weeks before, this time I doubted my eyes. Currently arranging for a divorce from his wife. Oh no. Oh no, no, no. Those few brief words, buried in the final paragraph as if they were the most trivial thing in the world, hit me with the force of a hurricane. I'd heard the rumors. I more or less understood that father was that sort of person. But there was no worse way to have those suspicions confirmed. Why? Why now? When my mother was recuperating in the hospital? Why now when she was finally getting better? Was this article even true? Many thoughts swirled chaotically through my mind. My hands trembled and lost their hold on the hateful piece of paper. The magazine fell to the wet pavement with a slap. As it hit the ground, the pages that had been folded back flipped around, revealing the cover. And as if to turn the dagger in my wound, one final piece of information was revealed to me. A tasteful work from a well-known painter, behind a number of carefully arranged headlines in a firm serif typeface. A weekly magazine, but one that clearly distinguished itself from the tabloids and gossip rags. A magazine of some credibility. The one that Mom was reading. A magazine my mother asked for every week. Has she seen this yet?
というわけで、ぜひこの件についてお姉ちゃんとしてコメントを聞きたいんだけど、時間を。
Wait no time.
ちょっと、おい!
Charging off the sidewalk that ran alongside the prefectural highway, I sprinted all out along a farm road, slanting diagonally away through the field of green. The path didn't turn toward my school, so it offered an ever so slightly more direct route. But it was only a farm road. In places it hadn't even been paved. It was an extremely difficult course to run on a rainy day. But I didn't have the luxury of worrying about that right at the moment. I needed to get to the hospital as soon as I possibly could. I needed to stop my mother from reading that. With the recent improvement in her condition, Mom had started to leave her room and visit the hospital store to purchase her own books and magazines. If the nurses were still delivering them with the mail, there was at least a chance they'd check for articles that might upset her. But it was hard to imagine the clerks in the shop would have been told to do the same. Halfway there, I could no longer muster the effort to keep my umbrella upright above me. I let the rain strike me and focused all my attention on running. Water went flying with every heavy stride, slapping against my legs, soaking my skirt. The small ember of satisfaction warming my chest only minutes before had been smothered completely out of its existence. I was cold to my very core. My momentum barely slowed after arriving at the hospital. I understood perfectly well that running in the hallways was off limits, but the rules I'd always obeyed mattered less than reaching my destination even a moment sooner. It's gonna be a destruction, that's for sure. There's no way this ends smoothly. Turning a corner on the 3rd floor, I finally entered the wing reserved for private rooms. A moment later, my feet came to an abrupt halt. There was something unusual going on in front of that familiar door. For a moment, I was simply bewildered. 3 strange men in expensive suits were standing just outside my mother's room, talking to each other just on the verge of entering. A vague but powerful sense of dread ran through my body like a jolt of electricity. I shouted angrily as I approached. The man who'd been reaching for the door hesitated. Before I could continue, the white-haired man at the head of the little group prompted me with a question.
失礼ですが、どちら様ですか?
この病室の榊美佐子の娘です。あなたたちこそ誰なんですか? 母に何のご用ですか?
Are they lawyers, I assume? Unperturbed by my fierce attitude, the white-haired man answered me with a calm smile.
ああ、あなたが由美子さんですね。申し遅れました。私、榊家の顧問弁護士をしております、津田と申します。
顧問弁護士？
ええ。この度はお母様の件でちょっとお話がございまして、立ち寄らせていただきました。
The magazine article I'd read minutes before flashed vividly before my eyes. Currently arranging for a divorce. In a heartbeat, my mind connected those words to this lawyer's sudden arrival.
せません。
は？
父を離婚させるために来たのでしょ。今、母は病気なんです。そんな話なんかしたらどうなるかわかるでしょ。
由美子さん、それは誤解です。私たちはその件ではなく、今後のお二人のことについて。
嘘！さっき雑誌で見たわ。全部知ってるんだから。
The man's composed face distorted into a scowl at the word magazine. He must have been trying to reach us before that information did. Not gonna talk? Oh, okay.
仕方ないな。おい。はい。
With a small movement of the lawyer's hand, the 2 men who'd been hanging back moved quickly toward me. They had me physically subdued before I could even register surprise. One man had slipped behind me and caught my arms in a firm, full Nelson. The other stood in front of me like a wall, eliminated any chance of escape. I screamed desperately, but they weren't the sort of people to flinch at the cries of a young woman. The private wing was never a busy place. Today it was entirely empty, and with the heavy rain drumming down outside, I doubt anyone elsewhere in the building could even hear my voice. And of course, against my strength of 2 fully grown adults, I was helpless.
しばらくおとなしくしていてください。
The lawyer's voice had grown cold. It was the all too familiar voice of an adult.
榊美佐子さん、弁護士の津田と申します。お話があって参りました。失礼しますよ。
Her words were extremely polite. If anything, that made them all the more frightening. Ignoring my tear-choked plea, he pushed open the door to my mother's hospital room. I was the first to react. The bed sitting by the window, which had always been occupied before, was now empty.
不在か。まあいい。待たせてもらうこととしよう。
In contrast to the perpetually calm lawyer, I was filled with a profound sense of unease. The doctors always made the rounds at this time of day. None of the patients were allowed to move around freely, much less my mother. They'd given her a normal space for the sake of camouflage, but by all rights she belonged in a room with bars on the windows. Normally it wouldn't be unusual to move a patient only 3 days from discharge back into the hospital's general ward, but my mother's condition was so delicate, her physician had decided to handle everything cautiously until the very end. It just wasn't possible that Mom had simply stepped out at this time of day. The doctor had arrived for his daily rounds. For a moment he simply stared at the bizarre scene inside the room with confusion in his eyes. Before the lawyer could stand to offer a greeting, I yelped out of the corner where the man had deposited me. He turned to the nurse at his side for confirmation, a hint of alarm in his voice. The startled nurse looked around the room as if expecting to find my mother hiding in a corner. It was all too much for me to process. Everything was moving forward smoothly only an hour ago. But now we were derailed, hurtling rapidly away into the darkness and confusion, all of our painstaking work falling apart around us. I had to look for my mother. I had to keep her from finding out about that article. I had to get out of this room, away from these people. Countless thoughts stampeded wildly through my head, but there was just one thing that seemed clear to me. I couldn't just sit there waiting. Before anything else, I had to find Mom. And all of a sudden, I remembered. The words rang out so clearly in my ears that for a moment I thought she was really there speaking to me. Pushing my way around the man who'd been holding me in check, I slipped past the doctor and dashed out into the deserted hallway. I heard voices from behind. I ignored them. I didn't have any real proof, but there was nothing else for me to go on, so I had no choice but to cling to my intuition. Taking the stairs two at a time, I headed for the very top of the building. By the time I managed to struggle all the way to the rooftop, my breath was coming in quick, ragged gasps. My legs were burning beneath me. I felt about ready to collapse. After all, I sprinted from my house to the hospital, and then from Mom's room up to the roof, with barely a pause in between. But my exhaustion was the last thing on my mind. I threw myself against the door with the last of my momentum, swinging it open wide. Alone in the dark, engulfed by the roar of the rainstorm, I screamed for my mother. It was coming down so hard now that mist was rising from the bare concrete. Even seeing across the rooftop was a challenge. Naturally enough, given the weather, I couldn't make out any signs of human presence. But just as I muttered those words, a white shadow stirred in the darkness. It was a human being. A woman dressed in the white clothes of a patient standing in the rain. From her height and length of her hair, I realized at once it was my mother. I splashed through the puddles to her side. She was staring blankly up into the sky, battered by the powerful rain, her entire body utterly soaked. I grabbed my mother by the shoulder and shook her frantically, trying to catch her attention. But her eyes were fixed on the sky. She didn't so much as budge. It was obvious at a glance that something was terribly wrong. Halfway through the sentence, I noticed something lying on the ground at the very edge of my peripheral vision. It was flapping around in the wind. I had the feeling I'd seen it before, not that long ago, in fact. That cover, that tasteful painting, the work of a well-known artist. Those headlines set in a restrained professional font. The magazine containing the article was lying at my mother's feet. My hand slipped off her shoulder. I staggered backward, barely staying on my feet. Why had this happen? Why did everything have to fall apart just when we were finally starting to move forward? Why was my mother standing there soaking wet? Why did she have that blank expression on her face? Many questions bubbled to the surface of my mind. None of them had answers. They just sat there suspended in my mind, stagnating, until they putrefied into a pool of solid sludge. My mother fixed her lifeless eyes on mine. I was startled. It was the first time for as long as I could remember that my mother looked me straight in the face. But that was without a doubt the worst possible way for that chain to be broken. There was no light in Mom's eyes. The words she spoke posed a question, but there was nothing like actual curiosity behind them. It was the voice of a machine. I wanted desperately to convince myself she was joking. But no matter how I tried, I couldn't make myself believe it. The evidence before my eyes was simply too powerful. Mama's face was paler than white, and at the center of her wide eyes there had been two bottomless dark wells where her pupils had been. Those tiny spots of black seemed more vast and more profound than the black sky stretching out endlessly above us. I was standing on the edge of an abyss, and I was afraid. Felt as though I might fall into those pools of darkness and disappear. But I couldn't stop staring. I couldn't avert my eyes from the thing that was trying to swallow me whole. After all, she was the only person left in the world who ever acknowledged my existence. I called out to her, praying the word might pull her back from across the chasm that separated us. But it was too wide. My voice was too weak. I was too weak. I shrunk away, just one step. My heel slid backward across the wet roof. And then, for just a moment, I felt as though my whole body was floating. Disoriented by the sharp impact to my backside, I didn't realize that I had been pushed out of the way until I saw a doctor moving past me. As I sat stunned on the wet concrete, they took my vacant-eyed mother in their arms. They were carrying her off to like an oversized doll away from me to someplace I didn't know. Pushing myself up off the ground, screaming, I ran toward her. I didn't make it 3 steps before another nurse caught me in her arms. Rising above the pattering of the black rain, a baleful roar filled the air, crawling up from the depths of the earth, demolishing everything in its path. That sound, like a massive boulder tumbling relentlessly across the world, merged with the scene before my eyes and engraved itself violently onto my heart. I tried to follow with my eyes as they carried her away. I strangled out one final cry. In response, the world filled with an intense light, as though a dozen cameras had flashed at once. For a moment I was dazzled. By the time my vision returned to normal, there was nothing left to see. No, not quite nothing. On that otherwise empty roof, one waterlogged magazine remained. It was dissolving by now, paper melting away, ink blurring into illegibility, but the memory of the truth it contained wouldn't disappear so easily. My broken mother was gone. The doctor who'd smiled and told me she would be leaving the hospital was gone. I was absolutely alone. I crumbled where I stood. My knees hit the ground first, then my hands, then my face. The wet concrete was pleasantly cold against my cheek. Maybe if I lay here long enough I would melt away and disappear, just like that magazine. The ground was cold, but my body was hot. I'd used up everything I had. I was empty. I'd given up on the very idea of moving. The merciless rain continued to pour down on me. Jet black rain, even though it wasn't night. The vicious dark water pooled around me, creeping up my body as if to swallow me whole.